Why are these strange words everywhere?
Oh, did you think it was Latin? What if I told you lorem wasn't a part of any language? Okay, so it's just nonsense words made to look like Latin. But no, ipsum is Latin. It means itself. So is dolor sit amet. It means pain he loves. What Lorem Ipsum actually is a far stranger series of decisions that lived beyond anyone's expectations to become the most famous nonsense text in the world. And an unsolved mystery. It starts with one man. I'm off to Virginia to meet him. So here's the situation. Today, Lorem Ipsum is filler text used in websites, labels, templates, basically anywhere words need to go.
The point is that it's English-looking nonsense, so people don't get distracted by the meaning of the words and can just focus on the design. And it pops up everywhere. But this is only the end of the timeline.
We can at least trace it to 1987. With the rise of Macs and personal computers,
one of the first text programs to use actual paper page formatting was Aldus PageMaker. And its third version had the strange filler text for all to use.
Of course, most people thought it was meaningless text. It's designed to be. But when someone asks Before and After Design magazine about it and they give that reply, a mysterious man writes back.
No, everyone is wrong. Lorem Ipsum is Latin, slightly jumbled, the remnants of a passage from Cicero's De Finibus, a book from 2,000 years ago. His name is Richard McClintock, and he's a former Latin professor and publications director at Hampden-Sydney College. Which is exactly where we're headed.
Dr. McClintock?
Hello.
Hello.
Brought you a rose off of our rose bush.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's beautiful. It's so nice to meet you.
To meet you.
Where did you see Lorem Ipsum in that first instance?
Well, as a graphic designer, I saw it a lot in the layout programs that we used to make the publications for Hampden-Sydney. I was looking at it one day and realized it didn't look as though it was entirely gibberish. There was this unusual word, consectator.
Do you have like an English word analogy? Like how rare is it?
It's the kind of word that you would put on an SAT exam.
Like punctilious.
That sort of thing, yes ma'am. I looked it up in the dictionary. No.
I do see consect.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. I'm glad somebody's paying attention. To pursue eagerly, to strive after, endeavor to gain. Neque quisquam est qui dolorem ipsum, quia dolorem sit, amet consectator ad episci velet. Cicero De Fin 1:1032. Then somebody writes into Before and After. Someone wrote in, I'm curious as to the Latin that you have hidden in some of your articles. It usually says Lorem Ipsum dolor. And the editor of the magazine said basically it was just gibberish. And I said, he's not right about that. And so of course I wrote him a letter and told him that it was in fact an excerpt from Cicero's De Finibus Bonorum et Malorum.
So you just wrote in thinking no one would care except this magazine and you who had corrected.
Right. I just did it as a pedant, you know. But it took off. It was insane.
So now we have some origins. In the summer of 45 BCE, a year before Caesar is killed, Cicero writes De Finibus Bonorum et Malorum, comparing pros and cons of popular philosophies. Now, the book itself isn't that notable.
Had you read it before?
I had not.
Oh, okay.
I have still actually not read the entire thing.
Oh, it sounds like it's not compelling reading.
Still, as one of the most famous writers in history, arguably responsible for the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and our enduring love for the Roman Empire, it's no surprise we've saved many Cicero works over the past 2,000 years. But immediately there are complications. Lorem Ipsum was not just copied down. The passage Richard found is Book 1, Chapter 10, sections 32 to 33.
Well, the NG is a big change because that's an English thing and not a Latin thing.
You would never see a word ending with NG in Latin.
No, and they took the V off Wellet, which that doesn't mean he wishes anymore, it just means Ellet.
To demonstrate just how messed up it is, the English translation of Cicero's original sentence reads, "Nor is there anyone who pursues or desires to obtain pain itself, simply because it is pain." In 2012, a Latin scholar at the University of Cambridge attempted to translate Lorem Ipsum into English and got Ro itself, let it be sorrow, let him love it, let him pursue it, ishing for its acquisitiendum.
But even if Lorem Ipsum's been tampered with, at least we have its origin. Before and After magazine publishes a correction, Lorem Ipsum, and quotes Richard's facts. Lorem Ipsum is Latin. What I find remarkable is that this text has been the industry's standard dummy text ever since some printer in the 1500s took a galley of type and scrambled it to make a type specimen book.
This is the narrative now repeated by almost every source on Lorem Ipsum. The narrative. See, I thought this video would be my usual process. Research, talk to experts, report back. But soon I realized all the Lorem Ipsum websites were wrong. And then I realized a complete history of Lorem Ipsum doesn't exist. There is no paper. There is no expert.
It's on page 34 of a book that no one in their right mind would actually open. So where on earth did they find it?
If you can dig out something definitive, this story could get so much traction.
And that's when this went from me making a video to me conducting a full research investigation. Let's start here. Every source I see on Lorem Ipsum says it was invented in the 1500s.
Right.
Every result you click on Google says with great confidence it was invented by an anonymous typesetter in the 1500s.
Yes, and that's all my fault.
Oh no. You were writing in because you were specifically trying to correct Lorem Ipsum and then you just added that.
Yes.
Added that in.
I actually never set out to become the world expert on this subject. I just wanted things to be right. And this has all kind of happened around me, and it's kind of like the person in Charlie Brown who had a cloud over his head everywhere he went.
And here I am making the cloud a rainstorm above your head. You definitely correct for that fault because of what you discover next.
It was only later when I went back to the book to look at it and physically turned page that all of a sudden it clicked that it was that particular page and not any just regular text.
Shall we go see the book itself?
Okay.
I'd love to see it. And it was in this library.
It was in this library.
Wow.
And this very copy of the book. H. Rackham, M.A.
Published in 1914.
Neque pora quisquam est qui do, which is splits the word. And then there's a page that starts off Lorem Ipsum quia dolor sit amet. Consectator ad episcuelet.
That's incredible. So with your discovery of the 1914 Rackham Book, I decided to go on my own discovery because I wanted to double and just triple check that Lorem Ipsum had not existed before then. And I actually was able to find dictionaries that actually have a de Lorem Ipsum cutoff as well from the 1800s. So this English one is from 1829. If you look under their definition of the word eo,
AO. Therefore.
Look right at this line here.
Nec pora quisquam est qui do, and then Lorem
Ipsum
quia dolor sit amet.
Right. I thought this was very intriguing. And then this other
indeed.
one is this German one from 1887. And this actually, same word you looked for.
Right.
Look, it says Neque poro quisquam est
qui
qui
do.
do Lorem Ipsum. So I found these and I got excited, but then when I looked further, they do both just cut off after only one sentence. And I do think someone is very unlikely to have the phrase Lorem Ipsum because of the cutoff in one of these dictionaries and then had to go find another book to get the rest of the excerpt. I do think evidence still stands for the 1914 version. But the other thing I went looking for, the other angle I wanted to try was looking for just any dummy text that was used before Lorem Ipsum just to see if it would come up in some archive of that. That's when I found the direct ancestor to Lorem Ipsum. Centuries ago, typographers used to copy a juicier Cicero quote, the start of a speech exposing the senator Catiline for plotting to overthrow the government. Quousque tandem abutere Catilina patientia nostra.
It was so common in the 17 and 1800s that it literally changed the shape of the capital letter Q as typographers competed to make their tales longer and more impressive.
I found all of these from what I was really looking for, which was like an archive, really cataloging all of the type specimens at the time. And that is this book, Daniel Berkeley Updike's Printing Types. It is so well done and so rigorously documented. I got lost in that book for a very long time, but when you comb through the more than 200 illustrations in the book, there is absolutely nothing besides the Catalina quote and English quotes or prayers. That's it. What's also interesting is that this book was published in 1922. To me, this was also useful to see that Lorem Ipsum had not been documented prior to 1922.
The biggest thing is that the whole concept of dummy text did not happen until the middle of the 20th century.
Oh, and why was that?
There was no way to do dummy text in those days because it was all lead type. A page of type would probably take the better part of half an hour to set.
I see. So you're saying there's also kind of a purpose-driven or history reason why it wouldn't have existed earlier.
It would be a waste of time to set up dummy text, basically, yes.
But in the timeline of Lorem Ipsum, we still have a huge gap from 1914 to 1987. So I attacked from the other direction and found the person who brought Lorem Ipsum digital and Aldous PageMaker.
I was there at the beginning, pretty much. They wanted a designer to be involved really early on.
Do you mind giving an intro to what Aldous PageMaker was?
It was kind of the first page layout software before you used a typewriter.
When updating the next version of PageMaker, Laura remembered something from her design roots.
You know, production was expensive. Right. You had to kind of figure it all out and spec it ahead of time. When I was designing a feature story, let's say, to lay out the body text, Letraset made this rub-down lettering, and you'd get sheets of this stuff. And for the headlines, you'd rub down individual letters, and for the body text, you'd get a sheet of the Lorem Ipsum text. So I decided that we should add it as one of the tools or the extras that you got when you got the program.
We've reached the heart of the mystery. Letraset is what I've been using to make all the fun text throughout the video. In the 60s, these little dry transfer sheets transformed type design. Before Letraset, designers had to stencil lettering by hand or pay a professional printer for it. But now, with just a bit of pressing, they could play with the core elements of text, like fonts. You know what that is. Leading, or vertical space. Tracking, or horizontal space. Kerning, the individual spaces between letters. People mix these last two up. Track first, kern later. And hierarchy. Headings versus subheadings versus body type. It's this dense, long body type that really requires dummy text. And Letraset, the cutting-edge design tool, was already on it.
What I did, I just took a sheet of this stuff and one afternoon really quickly typed it in. Somebody was saying, we got to get this done. So I typed it in really fast, and I know I made some typos.
What were you thinking on that afternoon as you were typing it up?
I was a little worried in the back of my mind. It's like, is this copyright infringement? I hope not. Fingers crossed. I made enough errors. I hope it's okay.
Could you have imagined that it would go on to like...
Not in a million years, no.
If you see a nib, zrill, or consectature with an extra E, that's Laura's Lorem Ipsum. But of course, how did Letraset get Lorem Ipsum?
That's why it would really be nice to talk to somebody from Letraset to find out. But how they got to it in the first place is the real mystery.
In fact, Before and After's original Lorem Ipsum correction ends with a note to Richard. Thank you for uncovering the source of our dummy text. Even Letraset, the graphics giant who marketed it for 30 years, didn't know what it was. So began my search. I combed through Letraset body type from the 80s, the 70s, undated body type, catalog previews of body type, ads for body type. Lorem Ipsum dolor sit amet, septitur ad piscis edalit, sed diam I sent dozens of emails to anyone remotely associated with Letraset. I searched online for every instance of Lorem Ipsum since 1914 and ordered photocopies from libraries across the country. Okay, no one's emailed me back, but I am closing in on an answer. For decades, there are 0 cases of Lorem Ipsum. But it suddenly pops up around 1967 to 1970, usually as tiny text hiding in ads everywhere from the UK to Mexico to Brazil. These are all of the earliest instances of Lorem Ipsum in print anywhere. It's a Mexican clothing company, and it doesn't even say Lorem Ipsum, but it says
aliquam erat voluptat.
Which comes right after it.
Exactly. And then
It's fun.
it's fun, right? This is from 1971 in Brazil. Yeah, you've got a good eye for the Lorem Ipsum. You can see the shape of it.
Right.
The very earliest one I could find, I swear, is a December 1967 ad for milk bottles in a British dairy magazine. We continue to discuss milking cows in every video.
Using 1967 as a benchmark, I hunted for any Letraset sheets from the years just before. And by sheer luck, I found this on eBay.
This is by far the oldest Lorem Ipsum I've ever seen, closing the timeline gap to just 50 years. And it's the longest one, which allows for some line-by-line matching. I was able to find a copy of Letraset with Lorem Ipsum on it from 1966. I'm gonna do a little magic trick for you.
I believe this is the first time Letraset's Lorem Ipsum has ever been entirely traced to a source. Take a look. This sheet is one Lorem Ipsum passage repeated 3 times. We already know Lorem Ipsum matches Definibus starting at the top of page 36.
So it's Lorem Ipsum, and it all matches through the end of the page here.
From there, it follows the whole page down to the end, nos amica et nebivol. Then it jumps forward to page 56, starting with molestias access potest, down to the end again with etiam mag quod quis.
Quis. It's modified, but it's definitely this whole page.
Yes.
Then we hop down to page 70, starting with gue ad amicos pertineren, down to sempiterm aut diuturning timer,
And then go to page 118,
starting with auam multa vitiose, down to nullian disiud putialinum depra et non.
This very, very dense text of Lorem Ipsum comes from 4 different pages of this book. What's also funny is there are some phrases in other languages. Es muy fuerte. That is 100% Spanish. And another one is salar le grand, which 100% is French. In fact, I even found where you would see salar le grand, which is in talking about salmo salar, which is salmon. Whoever was doing this had some fun with adding these portions.
I have been known to add things into dummy text when I'm using them myself.
Oh yeah, there you go. You can also see they're all ascending pages. Someone was just leafing through every, 20 or so pages and creating Lorem Ipsum. You can see the thought process almost by doing this dissection.
And I have had other people tell me that it went on like this.
Yeah.
But no one ever bothered pointing out that it was the exact pages, which is the definitive proof that it's this book and not some other text.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. Now we know where these words came from, but not who or why. The pre-Letraset trail has been cold ever since Richard first wrote to Before and After.
Honestly, if you can dig out something definitive, it will become like a minor pop culture sensation in the design world.
Lorem Ipsum is still a hot topic there. Actually, to this day, designers still debate the whole practice of placeholder text, which they call Greeking. Ironic. Some call it a design crutch. Words are essential. You need to evaluate your design together with the content and fit your visuals to the actual words on the page.
Because if you set an obituary in Comic Sans, you're insulting somebody.
Yes.
So I can see that point, but it's considerably outweighed by the practical purposes of the dummy text.
Others call it a helpful tool to start designing without the final words ready. And it can help prevent design meetings from going off track with clients caught up on exact wording.
Now it's a parallel process rather than a sequential process.
Now you know Typography 101 and form versus content. You've got the basics of graphic design. The thing is, even after finding all this and doing this dissection, I still don't know how.
You got from here to there.
Right. I had a bunch of emails out to people and heard nothing back. But I had a little bit of a clue in that by doing this work, you can tell that this was not the work of an amateur.
The garbled text is done with a lot of care and knowledge.
You can see a lot of rational decisions about why it looks the way it does in there.
They are making very careful additions, such as adding letters that wouldn't...
The ands and the ings, right?
Right.
The Y got stuck in because that's an English letter.
See, the Latin alphabet isn't exactly like English. It doesn't use letters like J, K, Y, and Z, while relying more on letters like Q, U, and M. If you look at the letters changed in Lorem Ipsum, Q's and M's are removed, while Y's are added. And words were removed surprisingly carefully.
The biggest change is that they left out the quia, that means because. which means that it doesn't make any sense.
So it's a very smart removal, a surgical removal of that one word
Right.
that creates meaning in the sentence.
And I think that may be why they took it out.
I mean, it sounds like someone who would have knowledge of both Latin
And
English and graphic design.
On a linguistic level.
Right. Which is a pretty narrow field, like expertise that you're looking for. Someone like
Yes.
you, basically.
I think the fact that it is garbled Latin text and that it has those other letters in a fairly Latin-based alphabet amount of frequency speaks to that it was done very, very carefully.
And then someone replied to my email.
Thanks to the powers that be, someone at Letraset emailed me back. And this is an email I would like to read to you.
This is from Dave Ferry, one of the earliest designers at Letraset, and he had a story.
At a marketing meeting,
Sometime during 1966, publicity design manager Colin Orchard mentioned that a sheet of dummy text would be useful for his work, and also for graphic designers generally. They needed more expertise, but fortunately,
Letraset had developed a strong relationship with the St. Bride printing library and the head librarian, James Mosley.
James was an academic who devoted his professional life to the history and contemporary use of printing and typography. James realized that all type founders in Europe and the USA use their own placeholder text in their own language, and he looked to an alternative, as Latin was the core for 90% of all Western languages.
And then he goes on to say that
Cicero's Catiline quote was too famous, so James found another Cicero quote and created Lorem Ipsum. Letraset adopted the Lorem Ipsum text copy as body type style in late 1966 or early 1967, with two fonts, Universe and Times New Roman, adding 6 additional type styles by 1971.
Does he tell why he chose that?
he speculates. Probably it was that there was another Cicero quotation that had been used, so this was a great alternative Cicero choice, and it may have been garbled by more than one typesetter working at his bench since the 1500s. So
Merciful
in a way, the recursive. Richard's mistake may have come full circle, but the rest of the story checks out. James was a librarian with heaps of old books, a historian fluent in French, Italian, German, and almost certainly Latin, and a world expert in typography. I wish I made this video a year earlier. Sadly, James passed away in 2025. But if anyone related to him or in general knows about the birth of Lorem Ipsum, or if any historians want to help me document all this research, please email me.
While we can't ask James himself, it feels very in the spirit of a type historian that we're tracing his past thinking through the design choices he made.
That's amazing.
I think we
You
have
should have
this.
come by here 2 years ago. I can't believe you got this done.
Thank you to Dave. He ends the message with Hoc est totem, amici.
This is everything, friend.
I want to ask you about how this whole journey has affected your life.
Well, I generally like to hide in dark corners, and it has been opening those dark corners up because people from all over the world have been emailing me for 30 years, is it now? Wow. Enthusiastic students come up to me at Hampton Sydney and say, I finally get to meet you. And it completely baffles me. I warn you that this may not be the end of this for you.
I'm ready. Bring it on.
People send me pictures of Chipotle bags with Lorem Ipsum on the side. And people send me places that Lorem Ipsum has been in the New York Times. Point out that I have been in a Hallmark movie, of all things.
Oh my gosh, it's Richard! Oh yeah, the craziest part of all this might be the fact that today, Richard's own discovery has become the placeholder.
That's because if you want to go make Lorem Ipsum, it's easy.
There are dozens of different Lorem Ipsum sites. There are generators where you can make your own apocryphal dummy text.
Telescope, billions upon billions. The carbon in our apple pies descended from astronomers. Post-ironic soft launch, ego death tacos, Echo Park Shellongbao, Doomer Praxis.
Cat Ipsum dolor sit amet, chase imaginary bugs. Chase imaginary bugs, flop over, hopped up on goofballs. Why must they do that? Hate dog snacks. I tell you, it's a cult.
But the most common way people do it is just by Googling Lorem Ipsum and copying the first result.
This is lipsum.com, and it's very handy. It randomizes the text and even has different languages. But it puts the history before the Lorem Ipsum text itself. So if you pull the first words from the website using code, or if you're just not looking closely, you get this explainer. Lorem Ipsum is simply dummy text of the printing and typesetting industry. Then later, Richard McClintock, a Latin professor at Hampton City College in Virginia, looked up one of the more obscure Latin words, consecutor.
First of all, this ruins the point of dummy text because it's in English and still distracting. But most of all, it's just wrong.
It only has our very first story, the false 1500s origin. So when people post this filler text, they're posting misinformation everywhere.
So I actually still have one thing left to do.
I sent corrections out to all the Lorem Ipsum generator sites with the wrong info. And they changed it.
The fact that now people recognize just the words Lorem Ipsum, which are nonsense, as a signifier of dummy text is kind of beautiful.
Or as a thing, right.
Right, it is beautiful that something designed to be meaningless has gained meaning. I think that is so
And
human.
significance, right.
Yeah.
So look closely the next time you see Lorem Ipsum in the wild. Maybe you'll see our correction. Now we've made our own little notch in the ever-changing text of Lorem Ipsum.
I'm immensely impressed with your energy.
Thank you. I got very invested myself in this journey, you know. I now feel like a Lorem Ipsum hunter. Like I
Yes.
cared very deeply about this.
I hereby
now, too.
pass the world expert title to you.
Oh gosh, this is a heavy burden to carry. As always, in my description, I've linked a Google Doc with all my notes and sources from the video, and I've linked my Patreon where I've uploaded my full interview with Richard because he's just so great and we nerd out so hard. So that's totally free to watch, and also totally free to sign up for my Patreon newsletter too. Or if you'd like to chip in to support my next videos, you can. Thanks for watching.